woke up, all of my group chats of my followers had changed their names to RIP this person, and basically it was that this girl had passed away from a brain tumor. Immediately, my heart was like broken, and she's a huge supporter, and also she's just a sweet child. And as a person, that's a sad thing to hear. But then, as I started asking the group chats details about it, I was like, how did you guys find out so quickly? I just talked to her like yesterday. And they were like, her mom DM'd us from her account. And that to me felt weird, because I was like, well, first of all, did her mom know her password? Second of all, if this woman's daughter just passed away, is the first thing she's gonna do is get on Twitter and talk to a bunch of people she doesn't know? Something about this doesn't feel right to me. So then I opened up my DMs, and I got a DM from her later that day from her mother, who was saying, this is such and such's mother. As you may have heard, such and such passed away from brain tumor, and we're really sad and really heartbroken, but we just want to let you know that she talked about you a lot, and she really cared about you, and you made a big difference in her life. And at this moment, I'm like, wow, this is devastating. But then the more I read it, the more I'm like, there's a lot of typos in here. This seems like a weird thing that her mother wouldn't say, because it ended with like, even in her final days, all she could talk about is how badly she wanted you to notice her. And now it's turning into like a guilt trip of, oh, she was dying and I didn't pay attention to her. I didn't answer her DMs enough. I didn't like her tweets enough. And I just found it very odd that a mother would DM a YouTuber the day after her daughter passes away and say all she wanted was to be noticed by you. And so through not very much deductive reasoning, I find out that this is this girl, and she's pretending to be dead so that I will finally notice her, even though we had plenty of conversations in the past. And it was one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. She's old enough to know better. It was deceitful. She had so many people upset about her, crying about it. Group chats literally flooded with people saying how upset they were. And all of this for what? Because I wasn't DMing you enough? So I finally got her to admit to me that it was her.
But it all starts 2 years ago. Me and some friends are driving down the street listening to music. I wasn't driving. I was in the passenger seat up front, just hanging out, listening to music. It was cool. We didn't really have a plan. We were just listening to music, driving around, trying to figure out what to do. And everything was going great. And then all of a sudden, we're driving, and this guy walks out right in front of our car in the middle of the street. And my friend slams on his brakes. Thank fuck we weren't going any faster, because if we were going any faster, my friend probably would have hit this guy with his car. But luckily that didn't happen. Everyone was okay, just kind of scary. And this guy didn't have a crosswalk. He didn't have the okay to cross. He was literally crossing in the middle of a pretty busy street. And it confused the fuck out of me, because there was literally a crosswalk just like a little bit more down the road. Like, he could have just kept walking a little bit on the sidewalk and then used the crosswalk and, avoided this. But he decided to cross in the middle of traffic. So anyway, my friend slams his brakes, we stop, and I noticed that the guy is just unfazed. Like, he didn't even look at us, made no eye contact, but he stopped. He just stopped moving. He was just standing in front of our car. Just super still, just standing in front of our car. Not looking at us. And my friend rolls his window down and he's like, dude, what the fuck? I could have hit you, man. Like, you could have gotten hurt. Why aren't you using the crosswalk? And my friends in the backseat are like, dude, this is fucking weird. Like, what's going on with this guy? Because he didn't seem like he had anything wrong with him at first. But after he stopped walking and just stood still in front of our car and didn't make eye contact or look our way at all after almost, getting hit by a fucking car, he just stood there and had the most blank look in his eyes. It was so weird. So my friend kept trying to talk to him. He's like, hey man, can you hear me? Are you okay? Hello? And my friend gets out of the car and I'm like, yo, are you sure this is a good idea? And he's like, yeah man, hold on. And he goes over in front of the guy and he's waving his hands, trying to snap this guy out of whatever daydream he's in. He's like, hey, can you hear me? Hello, man, you there? You good? And of course, cars start to come behind us and they're beeping and shit, and they're not having it. They're angry. And my friend's just ignoring them, trying to help this guy. And he just wasn't responding. It was so weird. I was actually nervous. I was like, what the fuck happened? Did we just put this guy in shock or something? We were so confused because obviously we didn't hurt him, but that is really scary. But anyway, my friend keeps trying to make contact with him. He's like, hey, can you hear me? Are you good? Do you need me to call someone? And then I open my door because I'm like, what the fuck? This guy might actually be in trouble. And I open my door and all of a sudden the guy turns around and he looks at me. And I was like, okay, so he is there. He's not completely out of reality. And he just gives me this blank look. And I was like, hey man, are you okay? And he looks back at my friend. And he just lets out the most scary, terrifying fucking scream, just ever. He starts screaming, we were hurting him or something. He was screaming so loud. And my friend's like, yo, are you okay? Are you okay? And he just goes, get the fuck away from me. And he runs and then jumps onto my friend's hood and then rolls on away from where he was going towards. So he basically ran back to where he was before he crossed and then ran into a parking lot. And I was like, what the fuck? And my friend's like, dude, what the hell even was that? I'm like, I don't know, but let's get back in the car. So we get back in the car, and I was like, should we follow this guy and make sure he's safe? Because clearly something's going on with him. Like, maybe we should call the cops or something. And my friend's like, yeah, I'm probably gonna. I'm gonna try and talk to him one last time. I was like, dude, I don't know if that's a good idea. He's like, well, I just want to see if he's okay. So we drive over to the parking lot, and we kind of follow this guy from a safe distance, and he ends up walking out of the parking lot to a neighborhood road nearby, and we're just kind of slowly driving behind him. And my friend rolls the window down, and he looks out his window and just yells at the guy. He goes, hey, man, are you okay? I just want to make sure you're okay. And the guy turns around, and I shit you not, he turns around, crouches down, like almost knees touching the road, and just goes, and then fucking takes off running in the other direction. And that's when I was like, oh, fuck this. Nah, fuck this, man. No fucking way. No way this dude really just kneeled down and fucking hissed at us like a goddamn cat and ran away. So my friend starts driving again and following him. And after about 2 minutes of following him, we see him run from the street onto a lawn and then up to the porch of a house. And he just opens the front door and runs inside and slams it. And we were like, dude, is that even his house? Like, did this fucking guy just really run into some random house? So my friend pulls over on the side of the road and he goes, Austin, go knock on the door and see if that's his house. And I was like, dude, fuck no. He just hissed at me like a fucking animal. I don't want to see if that's his house. What if it is his house and he fucking hits me over the head with a brick and drags me inside and eats me? I don't want to fucking do that. He's just like, dude, come on. Just take one for the fucking team. Go knock on the door. And I was like, no, absolutely fucking not. That dude wants nothing to do with us, and I don't want to go knock on his front door. So after arguing for like 2 minutes, so I get out of the car. I like very, very hesitantly walk up to the fucking door. I knock on the door, and I notice the blinds in the window next to the door open really quick. And he like looks at me, and he closes them really quick. And I was like, oh, what the fuck, dude? This is terrifying. Like, he could just come out at any minute and just beat my ass. So I was just standing there, and then all of a sudden I hear the door unlock. And I'm like, oh, fuck, here we go. Here we go. This is it. And he opens the door just a crack, and he goes, who's there? And I was like, hey, man, my name's Austin. We were just driving down the street, and you were crossing in the middle of traffic, and we almost hit you, and we just want to make sure you're okay and, like, you're doing all right, and if you need anything. And he just goes, yeah, I'm good. And I was like, okay, you don't need me to call anyone or anything? Like, is this your house? He goes, yeah, I'm fine. And I was like, all right, man, I'm sorry to bother you. He goes, it's all right. I'm going to go to bed now. I was like, okay, have a good sleep. And he goes, you too. And he just shuts the door. And I was, that is like top 5 creepiest fucking things I've ever seen. So I fucking turn around real quick, walk back to the car. So I get in the fucking car, and all my friends are like, what do you say, man? What do you say? I was like, I don't know. He just said, like, who's there? And I answered his question. And then I asked if he was okay, and then if he needed me to call anybody, and he said no. And I asked if it was his house, and he said yeah, and that he was going to go to sleep. And my friends are just like, that's so fucking weird. Like, he wasn't even talking just a few minutes ago. And I was like, yeah, well, let's stop bothering him and go home. And my friend's like, I guess it really is his house. Maybe he's just on some sort of drug. And I was like, that's probably my best guess. Either that or, like, I don't know. Maybe he's just going through some shit. And my friends are all like, yeah, maybe. And we pretty much just ended up driving home after that, and I never saw him again. I do think that was his house, because he ran in there and all the lights were already on. And I only saw one car there, which could have been his. And when he answered the door, he seemed a lot more comfortable. So my best guess is he was either...
Imagine you're 11 years old and walking to the bus stop in the morning when you're suddenly abducted. For the next 18 years, you're held captive by your abductors and hope that one day you'll be free. This was the reality for a young girl named JC Lee Dugard. She was taken just outside of her home in South Lake Tahoe, California on the morning of June 10th, 1991. A man approached her in his car as she crossed the street and asked for directions. Before she could even register his question, he uses a taser on her and she's paralyzed. That's when he grabs her and throws her in his car. JC's stepfather actually saw the kidnapping happen from their garage window and attempted to catch up to the car on his bicycle but was outrun. He immediately called the authorities who, with the help of the FBI, dogs, aircrafts, and hundreds of people, searched for JC, but to no avail. No one could find her and all the leads went cold. She was locked in a makeshift recording studio by convicted rapist and his wife, Philip and Nancy Garrido, in their backyard. On the first night, her abductor showers with her and handcuffs her. That night, she cries herself to sleep. Over the next 18 years, JC is completely dependent on him for every basic human need. They renamed her Alyssa, and she was repeatedly abused by Philip over the years. He would take substances and stay up for nights on end, forcing JC to fulfill his fantasies. Over time, he stops handcuffing her and starts to trust her more. When JC's 13, Philip Garrido is actually arrested by police for possession of substances and is locked up for a month. When he returns, curtains, he has an ankle monitor. Still, no one knows that he's holding JC. A year later, JC is 14 and has gained weight. She feels uncomfortable and is soon told by the Garridos that she's pregnant. She gave birth to her first daughter at the age of 14 and her second daughter at the age of 17. Both of her daughters are forced to live with her in confinement as she does her best to raise and take care of them. During this time, she writes in a journal about her feelings and wondered if her family members were ever searching for her.
JC over time became extremely depressed living in captivity and grew to cherish any human interaction, even if it was from her kidnappers. She didn't know how to escape, and after years of abuse and lies, she didn't know if she even had a family to go back to if she managed to escape. Eventually, JC's children were old enough and enrolled in school. Philip and Nancy would allow JC to attend the girls' orientation on campus, but no one ever recognized her or said anything to her. JC was too scared to speak up because she was conditioned to think that the outside world was a scary place and her only safety was with Philip and Nancy. Sometimes JC was allowed to go on shopping trips with Nancy or to the nail salon. She was taught to not look people in the eye and to keep to herself. At one point, Philip takes Nancy and JC to his parole agent's office to help him explain the projects he had been working on so the agent would stop harassing him. JC is questioned for 20 minutes and tells the officer her name is Alyssa and everything else she's been conditioned to say all this time. Then she goes and sits and waits with Nancy, and Nancy and JC are waiting for Philip to come out of the office, but that never happens. Instead, 2 officers come out, the one who questioned JC along with a partner. After some back and forth about who JC and her children really are, another officer joins and tells them that Philip confessed to kidnapping her years ago. For the first time in 18 years, someone asked her what her real name is and when she was kidnapped. JC was so terrified of saying her own name out loud, she had to write it down. She was quickly reunited with her daughters and recounted her story for the police. She's finally reunited with her family who never gave up on looking for her and never thought for a second that she wasn't alive. Philip was sentenced to 431 years to life without the possibility of parole, and Nancy was sentenced to 36 years to life. JC has come out with 2 books. In the first book, she talks about everything she went through while being held in captivity. And in the second book, she talks about living life and everything she's experienced for the first time since being free in 18 years.
So, do you guys believe in the existence of mermaids? Since we were kids in school, we were always taught about dinosaurs, and this seems like common sense to us because we were able to find skeletal remains. But if someone had just told me about these without the actual evidence behind them, I would have thought you were just describing some mythical creature. Like, look at this. Does this look real to you? But what about the findings of the remains of mermaids? And all of the sightings. Mermaid sightings and stories date back to 30,000 years ago. So many people from across the world, from across multiple cultures, have the same descriptions and similar stories. So how did this happen before we were even connected through the internet? Here are cave paintings from 7,000 years ago depicting what looks to be humans and mermaids fighting. Here's a skeleton that was found in Bulgaria. Here's a sighting from Nashville and another sighting in Vietnam. I don't understand how people can believe in aliens but totally write off mermaids as non-existent. While we've only explored 5% of the ocean and 4% of space, there's been several unexplainable underwater civilizations, weapons such as spears that have been found under the ocean. Are these just from sunken ships, or could it possibly be from mermaids? I remember sitting down in 2011 so excited about the documentary that was coming out about mermaids. Animal Planet was really building us up for some actual evidence. And then by the end, we just see this and realize it's fake. I was so disappointed, but it also made me think on how a mermaid would even exist. Well, one theory is called the aquatic ape theory. It's theorized that once we split off from apes in evolution, some of us ended up in the water potentially from trying to fish, which ended in these half-human, half-fish hybrids. It's also suggested that maybe we just came from marine animals entirely. This isn't fully supported, but it could explain why maybe some people have webbed fingers or webbed toes genetically. We also have very flexible spines and can hold our breath underwater longer than any other land creature, which as of right now is 24 minutes. But are mermaids evil? Well, there's apparently different species of mermaids, each residing in different areas around the world, sirens being one of the most evil and malevolent species. I always think of the sirens from Harry Potter when I think of these. Sirens can lure you in with visual and audio manipulation. They utilize songs to put you in a trance and bring you close enough to them so that you can see their true form. Usually they look frightening like this and have really long, sharp teeth. And this is when they kidnap you and keep you forever. And apparently a lot of people in the Caribbean area have experiences of being abducted by mermaids. I was watching this girl's video about how to make a deal properly with a mermaid. And apparently if you want something like to be healed or to be wealthy, Usually a mermaid will want something in return. It can be something as simple as salt all the way up to a child or a relative. Mermaids apparently have the ability to keep you breathing underwater, so it's not that they're drowning the person you give them, it's just that they're holding them hostage underwater. But if they're feeling nice, they'll let you see them once a year. So has someone ever caught a real mermaid? Well, apparently the closest thing that we've had to a real sighting of the mermaid is at P.T. Barnum's world-famous exhibition. You know, the guy that The Greatest Showman is based off of? Well, in 1842, he had a specimen of a Fiji mermaid that he showcased. And later on, he ended up admitting that this was a mix of a dry carcass from an ape and a bottom of a large dried fish that came from a Japanese artifact. But later on, an actual mermaid was sighted in the Indian Ocean, and he paid a lot of money for it. There are posters everywhere.